Hello, my name is Patrick Moore,
I'm Marlisa McLaughlin.
and welcome to Health Buzz.
Perspectives on natural health and healing.
The title of our show today is 48 Hours to Live, and the theme is, what would you do if your loved one was in the hospital, in critical care ICU unit, and all the doctors told you there's nothing more they could do? What would you do? That's the story we're going to bring to you today, and how one person made a difference and changed the outcome of life and death.
And that one person is my co-host, Patrick Moore, and I am so excited and delighted to be able to have this honor because this is a story that profoundly changed my own life when I first met Patrick. So it's the first time in medical history that a protocol was implemented, which was completely contrary to the medical protocols thus far in an ICU life and death critical care situation. So it was a comprehensive, holistic nutrient protocol. And it probably is the first time ever, if not will be, in medical history occurring.
Well, Marlisa, you know how hospitals don't want anyone to use vitamins or nutrients or herbs or anything natural, right?
Right.
If anyone who's ever been in a hospital before know it's almost impossible to bring anything unless it's a drug, a prescribed drug.
And even the food in the hospital does not reflect something that you would think was going to give you a boost.
Exactly. So this is a story that, my mom was faced with a situation where she broke a hip. Her condition was not sound. She was a little malnourished, not doing, taking care of herself at home, poor diet, poor nutrition, not exercising, drinking alcohol. Boom, breaks a hip into the hospital. I figured, get the hip fixed, go to rehab, come home, all set. But that didn't happen.
So what exactly did happen?
Started picking up infections and started deteriorating. She was deteriorated and had to be intubated. And then she deteriorated some more in the ICU unit on life support ventilator, deteriorated to the point where we had our family meeting and the doctor said, look, we've tried everything. Nothing has worked. I'm sorry, your mother's very sick. I don't think she has more than 2 days to live. So that's where this story started. But just to give you a little predicate, a little foundation, I have always been curious about vitamins, nutrients, herbs, enzymes, foods, diets. I was brought up overseas, different cultures. I took 6 years off to travel around the world. And part of that was just to examine, why certain cultures don't have this disease. Why do they have this disease? What are they eating? What's diet? And sort of the wisdom of the ages, which is one of the themes of our show, Health Buzz, natural perspectives on health and healing. And so I didn't know much about American hospitals. So my observation was I had all this knowledge, always trying to find out what vitamins can give you a better memory, more energy, more stamina, slow the aging process, make you stronger, make you more alive and vital and more energetic. And so there I am in the hospital for a few weeks watching my mother decline, and deteriorate, and then faced with the situation of life and death, and the doctors say there's nothing more we can do. That's when my brain started going off, and I said, what's wrong with American hospitals? What's wrong with the standard of care? What are they doing wrong that seems so obvious to me?
Well, I remember that you also told me very early on that your mother had infused a quote into your consciousness and subconsciousness from Socrates, the unexamined life is not worth living. So how did that affect the way you approached this situation?
Well, to always be very curious and to look and try to critique things and look for new ways, think out of the box, examine. That always went with me in my travels, trying to be curious and learn and things like that, and particularly with health. So here was the observation I had in that ICU unit when they said no more than 2 days to live. You take a senior, and many seniors have a subclinical malnutrition. They have a trauma event, come to the hospital. There's nutrition, their tank is on empty.
Right.
Their immune function is extremely weak. So, I looked at how my mother was being treated with all these drugs, immunosuppressive drugs, and being plastered with them, and just being given a few cans of like this dead, what's called Jevity. I said, how can you get better? Because the naturopathic, Hippocrates talked about natural forces within us are the true healers. But if you want to heal a person, you got to give them the right ammunition, if you want to send soldiers into battle, you got to give them the right weaponry.
Right.
So
They
I
need to be
saw,
fit. They
so
need to be, their interior needs to be fit to be able to
yes,
fight their immune systems and every ounce of will, right?
yes. So I said, how can my mother survive? She's given a few cans, for nutrition of stuff, and all these immunosuppressive drugs, and she's sick. And how is it possible to get better? So that's what I was looking and very puzzled at as to why they didn't do something with nutrients or things like that.
Okay, but I want to stop for a moment and just give you guys a really good picture of what was going on in the whole situation. So Patrick's mother is lying in bed, spiraling, unconscious,
on life.
spiraling down. Life is and death are battling against one another. The doctors have instructed his family to prepare for death. So your family went home actually and started the funeral arrangements.
Yes, they did.
And you took a different path.
Yeah, by that evening, the music was planned for the funeral. Relatives were notified and everything like that. In fact, our next door neighbor was a cardiologist at Yale New Haven, and as a favor to my dad, he went and spoke to the whole medical staff in the ICU unit, just to report back a second opinion. And he came over to my dad's house that evening and said, "Look, they're right. There's nothing more they can do. I'm sorry." And so my dad felt at least a little bit more comfortable. A personal friend could give him that inside medical advice. So I was puzzled. I said, I'm not going to let my mother go down. I was determined. There's no way I'm going to let her go down. I know I can do something. And I talked to the nurses about my philosophy about nutrients and trying to, get the immune system up and looking at vitamins and all these other wonderful things that I knew about. I said, what's the protocol here just so I can bring my stuff in? And she said, what do you mean by your stuff? I said, some vitamins, nutrients, things like that. She said, well, go to the doctor and remember this. Tell the doctor, you said there's nothing more you could do. Well, what do we have to lose? Say that. What do we have to lose if we try something new, natural?
Right. And now one of your other heroes is Louis Pasteur. And he had an extremely significant effect on this approach to you, too, about the quote.
Well,
that
yeah,
you love.
Louis Pasteur always talked about, even on his deathbed, it's not the germ, it's the it's not the pathogen, it's the interior, your interior, so whether you get better or not. And of course, we see on the screen, probably one of my great heroes, Dr. Linus Pauling, 2-time Nobel Prize winner. I mean, Linus Pauling, in 1969, developed, he was a molecular biologist and probably the most brilliant scientist after Einstein of the 20th century. But he spent the last 25 years of his life developing natural medicine, what's called orthomolecular, how you can prevent disease and treat disease if you use optimal dosages of nutrients and feed them to the body. So that's how we started this whole approach.
So orthomolecular, which
Yes.
just sounds like a bunch of marbles in your mouth when you say it, but basically if you bring it all down, it's just naturally occurring substances, particularly nutrients, in maintaining health and treating disease.
Yeah, for example, if you look at the recommended daily allowance for vitamin C, it's a measly 60 milligrams. And that's not to keep you well, that's just to keep you from a pre-mortal condition called scurvy, where you're hanging by your fingernails on a cliff. So what Linus Pauling was saying is, well, 60 milligrams, why don't we use 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000, 15,000? He used to use that every day in his life as just a natural health preventive. So I had experimented with vitamins all, the last 10 years, and I was like a test tube, always testing this, trying this dose, things like that. I was so curious. The unexamined life. So I was the test tube, examining my own body and how these nutrients fit in. So I just knew, I said, if my mom can get some of these nutrients in here, we've got a chance. We've got a chance. So the doctor asked me, well, what do you have in mind? I said, well, just, as Aristotle said, start with the simplest thing. And I don't want to scare them. I didn't want to scare any of the doctors with some exotic African herb. So I said, doctor, vitamin C. So he said, okay. Now, I think he felt sorry for me. Well, let the family have a little closure that they tried to do something, but he didn't know what I had in mind. Instead of the 60 milligrams of the recommended daily allowance, I asked the nursing staff to give 500 milligrams every 2 hours, or 12,000 milligrams a day, and thinking that if we could do one thing, because my mom, just to give you the diagnosis, besides this deteriorated immune system, her diagnosis with adult respiratory, acute respiratory distress syndrome, which is basically a collapsing of your lungs and your whole respiratory system. So you're not getting oxygen to any of your cells and organs, and everything just dies. It's like, drowning your whole body. body just can't function anymore. So
Well, if you can't get the life force into your life, then there will be no
yes,
life. So I totally get that. I just want to ask you this because for those of us who might not know, 12,000 units sounds like a lot because we're so used to a little.
yeah.
So that's not a dangerous amount, right?
Well, the history and evolution of vitamin C is that humans and the apes have an evolutionary defect in us. All the other
Oh,
species make their own vitamin C naturally, but maybe 100,000 years ago or more, we lost this enzyme that allows us to produce our own vitamin C. So if you take a goat equivalent in weight to a 150-pound person, that goat makes about 2,000 milligrams a day of vitamin C,
2,000. So we're
or two
already in
grams.
yeah, we're up in the,
So in times of stress, it could be, injury, stress, running from danger. It could be 7 times that amount, actually, equivalent to 14 and 15,000.
so very harmless, but helpful.
Well, yeah, and your body soaks it up in times of stress and injury, and there's something that your body has a very self-regulating mechanism with vitamin C, and that's that bowel tolerance. You start getting diarrhea if you're taking too much, so the body lets you know, and it's a fascinating thing. I've seen this time and time again. Someone gets very ill, they can take a lot more, the body soaks it up.
And then it gets rid of it when it needs to, when it's had too much. So
Exactly.
it's not going to put you into a toxic state of shock.
Yes, and vitamin C is a powerful immune booster, powerful anti-inflammatory, antioxidant. And I just pictured my mom, her immune system is shot. She has all this inflammation and her circulation is bad, oxygen is bad, bacterial infections. Let's use high dose vitamin C. So we started on it day one. And my attitude was hold the line, hold the line. If you're alive today, you can bring it, let's stop it there. Let's not get any worse. Because I felt that hour clock,
Oh, I'm sure.
the sand clock.
That's it. Now, another one of your heroes, Norman Cousins.
Yes,
He affected you also then?
he wrote a book called Anatomy of, besides studying Linus Pauling and vitamin C, he wrote a book called Anatomy of an Illness, which is, for anybody out there, it's just an amazing book. He's passed now, but he was a very well-known editor of what was called the Saturday Review. He was a literary figure, but he was greatly influenced by Linus Pauling. And he was diagnosed with ankylosing spondylitis, which is an incurable degenerative spinal disease. And so he said, well, instead of sitting around in a hospital and dying in a hospital where the noise, it's unholistic, the food is terrible, I'm checking into a nice hotel and I'm going to do 2 things. I'm going to laugh, got all the Groucho Marx movies and comedies and movies to keep his spirits up laughing, and I'm going to take 10,000 milligrams or 10 grams a day of vitamin C. Lo and behold, after a few months, he was out going back to his job. It was
That's
remarkable.
just totally remarkable.
Remarkable.
And why have we not heard that? Why is that? There should be a comic strip with Dr. Norman Cousins. He wasn't even a doctor, though.
No,
He was
just a literary figure, writer, reviewer, editor. Really a great man. So we started on the vitamin C, and after 1 day, fine, no difference. After 2 days, no difference. But my mom's still here.
right, because you were holding the line. That was the primary function of that part of the protocol.
Exactly.
So you succeeded.
Day 3, looked like a little slight improvement. But of course, I was assured that quite often patients in this condition might make a little rallies and before they pass. Day 4, improvement. We're looking at all the blood gas levels and we're looking at all the lab numbers. Day 5, improved. Day 6, improved. Day 7, getting better, better, better based on all the lab numbers. And people are saying, oh my God, she's still here. She's still around.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
But still unconscious.
Yeah, totally unconscious.
And how were your family members feeling at the time?
Oh,
So now
they were confused.
did they hold the funeral arrangements
Oh
still?
yeah, they're confused. They didn't know what to do. I mean,
Very confusing.
my dad had kind of come to terms, and now this is confusing. What's going on? And a lot of people were looking at me. What's going on in the ICU unit? But because my mother was still there, I asked the doctors if I could start implementing some other nutrients. And by the way, we don't have time to go through all these nutrients, but by the time this was finished, we got 15 different nutrients approved on the formulary. But I'll just mention a couple of them. The second one I chose was glutamine. Glutamine is the most important amino acid protein in your body. Under times of stress, your body needs glutamine to help promote its immune function and rally its sources, to stay strong and repair from injury. So we use 15 grams twice a day in a powder using a stomach tube, nasal tube feeding her. Then we got to probiotics, and I think we did that show, right?
Yes, we did. Yep.
Yeah, the
The
microbiome.
microbiome, you
Yeah.
want to take a look at that one. That would be very helpful to get some more information.
Yeah, I mean, you've probably seen this. It amazed me that they use all these antibiotics in the hospital. Well, what do antibiotics do?
They kill the good bacteria in your stomach, so you don't have a chance to fight back, and it
Yeah, I
will
mean,
spiral you down.
they get the bad guys, but they compromise all the good
Good
stuff
bacteria.
too. And what is that good stuff for? That intestinal flora.
This is just going to build up your immune system and get you stronger. And also, don't forget, if you've seen the microbiome, some of our transmitting
Neurotransmitter, serotonin.
thank you, serotonin is produced
Yeah,
not
man.
in the head, it's in the stomach. So if your stomach is in good health, then everything can be in good health.
Yeah, and also I saw my mom developing these yeast infections, things like that, the tongue, using NiceStat. And I said, so let's get the probiotics in. Let's get the probiotics. We got the probiotics. Now my mother's starting to wake up, and little by little we got multivitamins. We got ginger and vitamin C and enzymes, omega-3 oils in there. We got something called germanium, which is an amazing, I look at all the research in Japan and Russia where it's been used, and it's fantastic for rallying the forces of the immune system and actually processing more oxygen into the cells. Germanium, and coenzyme Q10, I mean, we put a whole orchestra of nutrients together. Now, during this time, my mom was awake, and we started to weaning her off the ventilator. Everybody was amazed. They couldn't believe what was going on.
That's absolutely stunning.
Yeah. So when they first started weaning off 1 hour, 2 hours, 8 hours, wow.
With
But then a
no
doctor
contact.
came in and said, the enzymes in the lab report were a little elevated. It must be the vitamins. Get those vitamins off. And I was crushed. It's never the drugs, right?
Right.
It's always got to be the vitamins. So they took my mom off what I call nutritional life support. I started to use it, and diagnosing my mom not adult respiratory distress syndrome, but that she had immune starvation syndrome. I made up my own terms, and within 24 hours, my mother, off the nutrient protocol, couldn't do more than 20 minutes, from 8 hours down to 20 minutes off the ventilator. It was terrible.
Which,
She collapsed.
I would
The
think it'd be
weakness.
proof in the pudding.
Yeah, after 2 or 3 days, I pressure them, resume it, boom, she goes right back up again. And next thing you know, we're up, a few days later, we're up to 18 hours. No one can believe it. This is phenomenal off the ventilator. Doctor comes in again, Marlisa, and little pancreatitis, so we got to get the vitamins off. It's never the drugs. My mom collapsed again. By this time, all the ICU nurses who were skeptical of me, what's going on in our ICU unit? What's all these nutrients? We've never seen anything like this before. They were all on my side. They said to the doctors, you're putting that protocol back up. Sure enough, they put the protocol up, and my mother started to get almost off the ventilator, actually off the ventilator.
That's just so remarkable. Now, aside from the nutrient protocol, you've also implemented some alternative therapies.
Yeah, it's amazing when you see a patient unconscious in the ICU unit. I'd come in and the nurses were talking to my mother. Hello, good morning, Mrs. Moore. How are you doing? And how's your family? And you're going to have your husband come visit you today and things like that. And I asked the nurse, I said, can my mother hear you? Can a patient hear you when they're unconscious? She said, they may. We never know. We could be sending signals subliminally. So, we do this. So I said, well, in that case, maybe I can bring in some therapeutic music for my mom. If she can hear it, I'll bring in her favorite music. We did that.
We also have a show, Music as Therapy, and it's amazing. Take a peek at that too as well, because the therapeutic value of music is almost as unbelievable as the story is.
Yeah, so I said, okay, I'm going to take advantage of that. And I think we learned in our show with Robert,
Right,
Music
yes.
and Medicine, that it's very important to use the music that the person likes.
It has to be something that can bring the life right up and out. So it's your own personal resource.
So I brought Frank Sinatra, my mom's World War II generation. I brought all the Sound of Music, Rodgers and Hammerstein, and people would walk by and they'd see this unconscious lady with these giant earphones. I'd give her 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening, so 4 hours of music a day, and so that was really, really cool. And then another thing I noticed was, geez, this place stinks. She has a respiratory illness and all these bleaches and chemicals and things like that. We need pure air here. So that's when I got permission to bring a HEPA filter in and got approval with maintenance, the engineering. So we had a high efficiency particulate air, cleaning up that air in there so she could breathe chemical free. And then she came alive, she came awake and started interacting with us, and we used little papers we wanted to communicate and things of that nature back and forth, so that was a morale booster. Across the hospital room, we put pictures of all the families, her dog, children, grandchildren with the names on it. So now the nurses or anyone coming in can interact with my mother. Oh, I see your dog Annie, so there was a real personal side.
And the nurses were your best friends, really. They were a huge asset to this whole process.
Yeah, here's a tip for anyone going through any type of medical environment. Make sure you respect the nurses. Make sure you respect the nurses. They're your best support there. Work with them, take notes, learn what's going on, rely on them, be kind to them and be respectful because they are your best source. And so, yeah, absolutely. The nurses really made this for me. So my mom's getting better and things like that. And, I said, well, my mom's been stuck in this jail cell, which is like these ICU units are. There's no windows, it's
sterile.
4 walls.
Right,
You can, go crazy. You don't know where you are day after day, night. You don't know if it's day or you don't know if it's night. You can develop delirium. So I said, I want to take my mom outside the hospital, down to the atrium, see the human race, see people. We need sunshine. We need, interface. So,
which to me would sound like a fabulous idea, but how was that taken by the medical
they
staff?
said, you can't take someone out of the ICU
What?
unit.
Outside?
I said, look, just put blankets on her, give me the oxygen tanks. And I started taking my mom down to the atrium at Yale, waterfalls, people, humans. And then I snuck her outside the hospital to sunbathe while no one was looking.
For vitamin D.
Sunshine, vitamin D, things like that, and just a morale booster.
And there was an Italian proverb about the sunshine that you shared with me.
Yeah, they say where the sun doesn't go,
the doctors do.
The doctors do. So sun is so important for vitamin D production, immune system.
And you can also take Health Buzz, vitamin D. We have sunshine.
Yeah, that's
shows.
great.
That's a really good one also to see how important it is because vitamin D is not only just a vitamin; it's an actual hormone. So it's going to go right into that immune system and it's kind of drive everything into gear.
Yeah, so that was a wonderful show we did when we hooked up with Iceland on that.
Right, it was pivotal. So vitamin D is pivotal.
Yeah. So there we are. My mom's just about ready to, everybody's amazed, during this whole process. And, it was really fascinating to see. I was there all the time. The cultural differences, we had the maintenance staff, a lot of them African American, and you can imagine, Latino, African American, a lot of these guys, didn't have a father, just a mother. So they saw me there all the time, right on, they were my best supporters, and go, bro, go, you're there for your mother. And I remember they said to me, look, you can always get another girlfriend, you can always get another wife, but you can't get another mother. Your mother is precious. So
you had a lot of support for honoring that process.
And another tip about being in the hospital is write letters for all these people that are helping you, and write the letter to a president of the hospital. Don't just bring a box of chocolates, Dunkin' Donuts, a letter in a nurse's file, a letter on the custodial engineer's file, a letter in the administrator's file directed to the president. That's the best thing you can ever do to say thank you, and they will love you forever.
Well, that's a really good tip.
Yeah.
Plus, it is also good for your own spirit to be able to give back and realize that a conscious act of doing will probably promote your good health more than you can imagine as well. So it's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah.
But I also know there weren't so positive responses at times about you with taking care of your mother. You were sleeping at the hospital. All your spare time was.
Yeah, a lot of people said, "Oh, what do you have?" I remember this one nurse. What does this guy have, a fetish for his mother? I mean, to me, I was there. This was critical care. We're doing something no one's ever done before by implementing 15 different nutrients getting on the floor, and I had to fight for this and push it. It wasn't easy, and. And one of the nutrients we use where people really thought I was crazy is apple cider vinegar. Can you imagine bringing apple cider vinegar into an ICU unit and putting it down, and people thought
And at this point, she's done with the tubes?
No, we're using the stomach tube. We're just mixing all these nutrients into little water and pouring things down, 3 times a day, 4 times a day, depending on the nutrient. So they started making fun of me. Oh, here comes Mr. Apple Cider Vinegar. But it works. I mean, it's a fantastic nutrient to add to your program. It just cleanses the body, oxygenates the body, balances blood sugar. And so we got to the point where, my mom, people thought this was a miracle. But the nurses watched and they saw what these nutrients did to the labs and everything like that. We got her down to a step-down unit, a couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks, and then we got her into a rehab unit for a couple of months to get stronger because she was so weak. Got her home.
That's just amazing. That's a beautiful, beautiful story.
Yeah.
Beyond that, so once your mom became a little bit more independent, was she able to get around? Like, we all know that exercise is good for us. I'm wondering how you were able to get her from lying in a position of on death's door to being able to be more self-sufficient
Range of
with her.
motion exercises,
Right.
arms, legs, your feet, doing exercises, resistant
And you
things.
had to help her,
Hundreds
didn't
of
you, with
yeah,
her?
hundreds of these a day. Scissors with your legs. We did hundreds of these a day, strengthening in the bed, getting her up little by little. It took months. It took time. But little by little, we got her strength. It strengthened her lungs, even though she had damage to the lungs, a little fibrosis. We got the nutrients going in every day. And, it took a while to get her strong. I mean, 6 months at home before, because she was on oxygen and things like that, got her strong so that she could have a viable life.
And she did quite have a beautiful,
Another
beautiful
12 years.
12 years as
From
opposed to
2
48
days
hours.
to 12, yeah, to 12 years, so.
And didn't they give you, when you came home, they told you they didn't
Oh,
think she was going to be
in your mother's
lasting
condition, the
more?
pulmonologist said, well, she got fibrosis and she's weak, maybe 24 months she might last, maybe 30 months, but we got her 126.
That's just
And
fantastic.
that's the power of nutrients. I mean, natural medicine, naturopathic medicine, a good diet, exercise, I mean, all these things we talk about on our show can make a tremendous amount of difference.
Okay, so we really don't have much more time for the
Okay.
rest of the story, and this is a great time to jump in and say, okay, so I'm a layman. I don't have any formal education aside from being a yoga teacher. And so in certain aspects, I don't have any idea, except what I've learned from our show, where I would start if I were to try to approach my life to help, especially if it was a
For
critical
education, you
situation.
mean? Education.
Absolutely. Where does someone start? Where can they start without being overwhelmed?
Well, you can start simply with buying a few magazines. I mean, Woman's World. Now, people may laugh at me, but they have great nutrition sections, and they specialize in different nutrients. So you can look at Women's World when you're checking out of the Stop and Shop. First Women is another great magazine. If you want to get more sophisticated, the Life Extension Foundation, lef.org, has one of the most brilliant monthly magazines. And so just start simply like that. Books. Prescriptions for Nutritional Healing by Phyllis Back.
And that's been around for ages, and it's
Yes.
fantastic. It's so accessible and easy to use, and takes the pressure off of you thinking you need to know more than you know when you start.
Exactly, and just read it and refer to it. Dr. Atkins' Vita Nutrient Solution, Nature's Answer to Drugs, is phenomenal, fantastic. One of the Robert Crahan, who helped co-write that book, was one of my mentors. So that's a great book and a good reference to start with. Websites, naturalnews.com. lifeextensionfoundation.org, lef.org, mercola.com. Those are just 3 to get started with. Well, you get weekly, daily, different newsletters on different health subjects.
So little bits of information
Yes.
at a time so you're not overwhelmed, and
Yes.
you're empowered so you can move forward.
Exactly.
So what did you learn from all of this now that time has passed and you've got it under your belt?
Fate favors the prepared mind. Fate favors the prepared mind. There's nothing more important than your health. And to be able to learn about different foods, to learn about different nutrients, how you can combine them and actually make a difference. And you never know when you're going to, when it's going to come in handy. In my case, just for years and years, just having curiosity, having that unexamined life, examining that life, wow, it came in handy, and it actually changed my career from being in the journalism and the international business and marketing and travel. I said, okay, God has sent a message. I intervene in my mother's life. It's the greatest gift I can give back to my mother for bringing me into life. I'm going to formally go back and get a master's degree, a PhD in naturopathic medicine. So that's made all the difference.
So thank you so much for watching, and we hope you join us again on Health Buzz. And go to our Facebook page. We'll be posting some information that might be useful for you as well. Patrick?
Thank you very much. And also 48 Hours to Live. There's a whole story about it on YouTube, 48 Hours to Live.
Patrick
YouTube,
Moore.
Patrick Moore, if you want to see a lengthy overview on it for an hour and 15 minutes. Okay. Thank you,
very
everybody.
much.